All right, we're live. Hey, welcome to the Power Not with Juan Boyce. I am your host, Juan Boyce. I am a self-taught engineer. I learned my first line of code and I was programming by the time I was age 11. And let's see, I've worked for a lot of companies, places you might have heard of, Microsoft, Bank of America, places you definitely have not heard of, early stage startups and whatnot. I have been um, solving all kinds of problems, scaling MVPs, etc., etc. But now I am working on being a leader, and being a leader is a different type of problem, sort of like tying a perfect bow tie. So today we're talking about tech and leadership with my guest John Crickett, and I'm extremely happy to have him here. But before we do that, let's go ahead and say this is a live program, so if you put your comments, your questions in the chat, or you put your questions in the comments, I'll be able to see those in real time and be able to respond to them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to my guest. My guest today is someone who's not just talking about leveling on up engineers, she's actually doing it one post, one course, and one conversation at a time. John Cricket is on a mission to help 1 million software engineers and engineering leaders grow. And that's not hyperbole, it's a real goal backed by consistent action. He's been a VP of engineering, a staff plus IC, and a lifelong learner who is constantly pushing the edge of what it means to be great at this craft. You might know John from his bold, thoughtful posts on LinkedIn, whether he's breaking down what makes the tech stack truly work, sharing insights from a dozen networking calls in a single week, or reminding engineers that writing is just as core to our work as coding. Personally, I'm excited about this conversation because John is not just sharing tips, he's modeling what it looks like to show up as a thoughtful, curious, and high impact engineer in public. That's something I'm trying to do too. So today we're diving into everything from personal branding and pragmatic tech choices to building better networks, asking better questions, and leveling up every single day. So thank you for being on my podcast, man. I greatly appreciate it. So, before we get to the actual questions, well, let's see the tie. Is the story behind it?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on. And I'm kind of feeling embarrassed now after that intro. It's so good. I hope I can live up to that.
Oh, I I I I don't know if I can live up to it. You came on my podcast. You're elevating this just with your presence.
No, I think it's the other way around. You're the one that's very stylish here. So you've got me in a shirt for the first time in over a year.
Oh wow, okay. Did it still fit? Because last time I had some clothes I didn't wear in a year. Let's say either they shrunk or I'm lying.
It still fits. It still fits.
Well, that's a good thing.
That said, I could do with shrinking a bit, Couldn't we all when we get a bit older?
Ah, all right.
So, to your question, here is the bow tie.
Nice.
Not much of a story behind it. I borrowed it from a family member specifically for this because I have to admit I have never tried to tie one properly myself. I did
Okay.
get married in a bow tie, but it was pre-tied.
Oh no, no. I made a rule. All of my groomsmen, they had to wear real bow ties. The only one who got away with the pre-tie tie was my nephew, but he was just under the cutoff age. Had we gotten married a year later, nope, would have made him tie a tie. Well, I'll show what today's tie is. This is a fun tie. Last week I had orange ties, and I guess, just to show that I have more orange ties, this one is fun. I actually got it from a thrift store. I don't always get my ties brand new. But I don't know it called to me like all of the ties do. So that's exciting. So let's go ahead and get to the first question here. So you've made it your mission to help engineers and leaders grow. What's first sparked that drive and how has it evolved over time?
So throughout my career, I've helped people learn, partly from necessity, partly from it was just part of the job. And as I thought back, as much as building software has been satisfying and fun, building people up has been even more satisfying and fun. So, right from my very first job, a couple of months out of university, where I was given another junior developer to kind of mentor, coach, help as they settled in. I enjoyed helping them. I enjoyed showing them. I enjoyed showing them how to do the things and how to settle into the role, where to find things in the company, how to build the software, teaching them a couple of the programming language they didn't know at the time that we were using for some of the projects. And that has continued throughout my career, helping other people grow. Every time I joined a new company, I typically found a lot of the companies I joined, the people were maybe not as excited about software as I was. So again, we're talking late 90s, early 2000s. Everywhere I went, I had 3 or 4 books with me, the big thick O'Reilly books, several hundred pages of, in those days, I was learning C++ or Java, and not everyone else was enthusiastic with me. So I generally ended up teaching other people and sharing my knowledge. And I was the guy with all the books that everybody came to. So I kind of fell into that role as an IC, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed sharing the knowledge. I enjoyed learning new things. Then when I started my first business, my first employee was my brother, who had done a degree in accounting. Accounting's not really transferable directly to software, so he needed to learn how to code. So I taught him how to code, and again, I enjoyed that. Taught other people that work for us how to code. We grew that business up, and then again, when I went back to working for other people and transitioned into management, again, having to level people up and grow them, and it was really satisfying. Hence, throughout my career, I've been doing it, and it's just been very, very fulfilling.
Okay. Well, you had success both as a senior IC and a VP of engineering. So, what has that dual perspective taught you about what makes someone truly effective in each role?
So I don't know if it's necessarily the dual perspective, but I think when you flip over to the other side and take on a senior leadership team role, or you start your own business, you start to see there's a lot more to what we do. You start to see that, okay, let's take my first business, for example. I wanted to ship perfect code. I read all the books about this is great code, design patterns. I wanted my code to be perfect. But then there's a tension when you're, as I did, start my business, bootstrapped it, borrowed money on my credit card to do it. There's that tension at the end of the month when you're like, the bill's coming in soon. I've got to buy food. How am I going to pay for it all? Right, I need to get this shipped and invoice the customer and get paid by the customer. So you start to realize there's two sides to it. There's, yes, it would be ideal to ship perfect code. I want to do things the perfect way as I understand it at the time. I also want to eat. I want to buy a beer at the weekend. I want to be able to have a life. So I need to get paid. I need to get the work delivered to the customer. I need to collect the revenue on it. And that's a very, very simple example when it's your own business. As you start to grow and you realize you've got responsibilities of paying your own staff or taking on a leadership role in other companies, and you know that you've got to help that company make payroll at the end of the month. You start to see that there is more than just the software. We have to market, we have to sell, we have to deliver, we have to keep our customers satisfied. We have to support whatever requirements we need for investors to keep them happy, for cash flow requirements. We have to be aware of what's the taxation implications. How is this going to affect whether or not what we're doing is R&D, whether it's not. It's not. So we can, in the UK, we get tax credits against that. There's a lot more, and there's a whole bigger picture that you become aware of. And if you then transition back to being an IC from the management, as I've done a couple of times in my career, you have this different perspective that you don't see when you're a purely software engineer. You've seen the other side. You've seen that there is a much bigger picture to things. So identifying that that's the difference now is that I have that big picture view and that understanding that there's way more going on than just the software that we see when we're focusing on that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I know that definitely as a software engineer, as an IC, I'm always trying to improve the code. There's it's never quite perfect, but you do have the intention of yes, it does have to get out there, and that's the business end of it. So speaking of business end, let's go ahead and start with the tie here. So I've already draped mine over my neck here. All right, and this part is going to be fairly easy. Uh, I'm going back to the animal thing. So all you have to do is cross it over, uh, tuck it under, and then put that squirrel on your shoulder, or parrot, whatever, any kind of animal. But the loose end goes over your shoulder. Then this way will be and then we'll just hold that for now. This is going to be the least awkward part of tying the tie. So tell me, when you look at engineers who grow the fastest, what do they tend to have in common? Oh, I don't hear anything. Are you
It's
muted?
it's always that curiosity one. So an interest in knowing more. So they tend to ask more questions. Why are we doing this? What does the customer want to achieve? What is the benefit of this? Is there any alternative? So that deep understanding and that openness to learning, and again, that applies to whether it's what we're building and why we're building it and how we can help the customer. It applies to maybe asking some questions like, why are we using this technology? Is there an alternative technology? Why are we following this process? This process is causing us friction. Could we do it better? Could we change something? So that constant curiosity and that willingness to learn and ask questions and challenge things.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I know that. Well, I don't know. I started programming relatively early, and definitely I was a kid that asked a lot of questions, probably too many questions. It probably wasn't the best thing for the adults all around me. So I definitely identify with the asking a lot of questions, and that also reminds me of something you posted about how as a leader you can you can get the results that you're looking for by asking better questions as well, right? Instead of saying, "Hey, when's this going to be done?" You ask, and if I remember this correctly, when would you be surprised if we weren't done? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest tragedies of our modern education systems and maybe some of how we parent, in that we discourage kids from asking questions. When you've got a young kid that's just learning how to talk, they ask why all the time. Why is this? What's that? And maybe as parents, sometimes we get a bit frustrated. It's like, just go to bed, stop asking questions. But we shouldn't. And that curiosity, that innate willingness to potentially look for, well, they don't even think about it. They don't think about looking foolish. Whereas adults, we now start to worry. It's like, am I going to look silly if I ask this question? Is this a stupid question? Where kids, they don't have that. They just ask the questions. And that's why they learn so fast. And I think that's something that we need to encourage as leaders, and we need to be more willing to do as leaders to ask those questions, be curious, and be willing to look, daft or silly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, it's like there's a change from being a child to being an adult where instead of asking questions, you want to have the answers, or even worse, pretend like you have the answers, which is absolutely a bad thing, you know? So I get that. And I like the what we're saying here is stay curious, ask questions, don't worry as much about looking silly or dumb, because asking those questions, I think, even being asked a question, I think triggers a certain way of thinking about assumptions that you make, right? So I think that definitely can lead to being a better engineer. Even questions like, "Hey, why are we all wearing neckties? Why aren't we wearing bow ties?" But I don't know. Maybe that's just me being silly. That's okay. I'm trying to embrace more
So
of myself these days.
no, I think that's a great question because I don't recall ever asking that at school, but I do remember asking at school, why on earth do we wear ties? Because I had to wear a tie at school. I don't know if kids still do at school. My kids are homeschooled, so I don't really know what modern school kids do. But I do remember at school continue saying, why do we have to wear ties? Because every time I lean over the meal table, it drags in the soup or the food, and now we've got this bunch of kids wandering around school with food on their ties. If we, don't think I thought bow ties at the time, but they would have been a lot better.
Yeah, of course. Lots of what you call scientists and doctors and whatnot wear bow ties simply because you don't have to worry about it dipping into your soup or whatever. And of course, I would say they're stylists, but perhaps I'm biased in that regard. Uh, yes. What role do you think communication, written or otherwise, plays in becoming a top tier engineer or leader?
So, not whatever we do in modern workplace, we are almost predominantly working in teams. Unless you're in a one-person business, you will be working in a team. Even if you're in a one-person business, you will have to talk to customers and sell. You'll have to support those customers. You'll have to deliver whatever you're doing to them. So every single thing we do involves communicating with another person. If we get that communication wrong, we mess up most of the business. We don't sell, we don't retain our customers, we don't, as software engineers, perhaps build them the right thing. We don't build the right thing the right way. So every single step of that is communication. And again, maybe even if you're unemployed, if you want to get a job, your interview is communication, your CV or resume is communication, your application is all communication. Your follow up after you've been offered a job is all about communication. Every single step of that is communication. Even writing code, we are communicating our intent and what we want to the compiler or to the computer and to future teammates, to future team members, to our future selves that are going to read that code. And I think it was Kevin Henning that first introduced me to the stat that code is read 8 times and we write it once. So again,
Mm,
every single bit of that is communication. It's so important for everything we do.
yeah, that makes sense. I before I was a official professional software engineer, I was actually in tech support, and I recall that was all about communication, communicating with people who didn't necessarily have the same language and the same context that I had. And I really, really had to listen between the words to truly understand what they were saying. I think that really helped me as a software engineer because, as you mentioned, um, customers, they might think they know what they want, but they don't always communicate that in the right way. And so you really have to listen to say, well, are they watering down what they're asking because they don't think that what they actually want is meaningfully fully possible? Or, and there's also the opposite side where I know the system and I know what it's capable of doing, and I might have to manage their expectations a little bit. But speaking of manage expectations, let's go ahead and go to the tying part here. So this part is going to be the front of the bow. So what I like to do is I like to try to find the widest part, put my finger there, and then I fold it, and then the middle of that should be right at your neck. And then you pull that parrot off your shoulder, and then you pull it down, and you should have what is an elephant. This doesn't look like a good one, but I'll work with it. But uh, oh, but for right now, oh yeah, that's right. Well, I like to hold that elephant right there. Oh, yours probably looks better than mine, but ideally you want the skinny part of the elephant to come in. There you go. Yeah, that's perfect. And we just hold it. Yeah, but hold the front. Perfect, perfect. All right. Ooh, okay. Here's a good one. You talked
Yeah,
about the value.
I
Uh,
was going to just say there, you mentioned your first job was in tech support before you
yeah.
moved to software engineering. My first job wasn't in tech support. because I went for the interview to try and get my first job in tech.
Hmm.
I failed that interview within, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds of arriving. And that's actually how I got my first job as a programmer.
Wait, you failed the job and got, wait, you failed the job and got the job. Wait, you're gonna have to repeat that because I don't
Yeah.
think I heard that.
So I turned up for a tech support job at one of the UK's first internet service providers. And it was the middle of summer holidays, my first year at university. I turned up, it was a really, really gorgeous sunny day. I turned up, eyes watering, nose streaming, barely able to talk with hay fever. And quite likely the hiring manager said, "You can't talk to people on tech support, John. I can barely understand you now. The
Wow.
hay fever is so bad." And he said, "But you've come here, so tell me a little bit about your university course." So I told him what I was doing and that I enjoyed programming and that I've been doing since the age of 9. He said, "Well, we might need another programmer." So he took me out of the tech support, introduced me to the rest of the company, and I got a job as a programmer, which is actually what I wanted to do.
Nice.
So I always encourage people, if you're struggling to find a role, try something that's adjacent to it. You might be a good way to transition into it, or you might get lucky like I did and accidentally end up interviewing for the role you really want.
Well, that's so wild because I wanted to be a programmer because I've been programming since 11, and I assumed I'd be able to walk into a place and get a job as a programmer, but well, tech support was tech adjacent, and the way I actually switched over into software engineering was that I automated some aspects of my job. And then that got the attention of the CTO, and he said, "If you're going to be doing that kind of stuff, you need to be doing it from my department." And we ultimately took that automation that I created and built it into the internet. So that was a nice thing,
Cool.
you know. Wow. But let's see. But you've talked about the value of building a strong network. For engineers who are hesitant or introverted, where do you suggest they start?
So I can identify with that. I would say I'm very, very introverted. I don't particularly enjoy going out to big events and talking to lots of people. I'm quite a private person as well, so I don't particularly want to go and talk about a lot of what I do. But networking is incredibly powerful. Again, I learned about that when I started my first business in 2001. I had to sell, had to get customers, or I wasn't going to eat. Networking was my way of avoiding trying to sell, thinking, I'm not going to pitch people. I don't want to go and ask people to buy. I'm not comfortable doing that. I don't want to be like a real estate agent or used car salesman, pushy sell. I don't want to do that. I had that typical kind of techie view of salespeople. So I figured if I just go and meet people and talk to them and find out what they do, engagement conversation. I've heard this networking is the way you do business and it's a way to meet people. I'll go and do that. So I simply did, and that's how I grew my first business, by networking with people. Along the same time, I'd been a member of a professional organisation, um, was at the time the Association of C and C++ users, and I'd interacted with people there and built connections there and got built connections and built relationships with people there and built some level of trust with those people. And I started to build friendships with some of those people as well. So I could see how that professional network was introducing me to people that could help me grow and I could learn from. I saw how in my business, talking to people, boarding customers, and introduced me to people that would buy from us. And both of those were incredibly powerful. So I saw how well that worked. And then, that's 25 years ago nearly. I have worked with some people in 3 or 4 different companies because they've been part of that network, and we've introduced each other to different organizations. I still know most of the people back from back then. I've referred people to business, referred business to people from connections I've had. So it is incredibly powerful, incredibly useful. If you want to go and do it as an introvert, then just focus on doing it one-to-one. Find people that you can meet one-to-one and have a conversation like we did, like how we met. I put that I wanted to meet people. You said, "Hey, let's do it," and we got on a call and had a chat for half an hour. So
Yeah, that's I think that's actionable advice. Um, I'm an introvert, definitely, but one to one's a lot less scary than one to many. Forgive me from our programming terms. I guess I'm an engineer through and through. So let's go ahead and do this. This is the hard part, but we'll get this done. You grab your elephant ears with your other hand. You pull on that elephant's trunk, and then there should be a hole that's behind there. I try to get to it with my index finger, and then you can grab the base of this trunk and just pull the base of it through that hole. That should form your back loop, and if it's done right, you'll have a bow tie. This is going to be a little tricky for me right here because I think my tie is a little bit. Actually, this didn't come out too right.
no,
My
no
tie
different.
needs to be adjusted. What the? Let's see. That's weird. It's it. I don't know. Maybe my neck. No, either my neck grew or my tie shrank. That's.
Right.
I'll try that one more time. But what I'll do is again do that over the shoulder, fold over, and that'll give me my elephant ears. This is looking better. What I want is the skinny part of that trunk to be visible.
Okay.
And and then this time I'm able to punch through with my index finger easily. I didn't have to use both hands. I pinch with one, and then when I push through the base, then I'll get a proper bow tie. Don't worry, I'll do that again so that we can get a better result. But I needed to at least get
No,
it
that much.
one time. Ah, all right, that's better. Okay, but no worries. Let's do one more question and then we'll try it again right here. Let's see.
Okay.
Ooh, okay. This is a good one. You work in public, sharing ideas, opinions, and lessons. Why do you think it's important for engineers to have a public presence, and how can someone find their voice?
I think with the way that the market is at the moment, there are fewer opportunities for a lot of people. Having that public presence, having that personal brand, for lack of a better term, gives you a far better opportunities to be discovered, to be found, and that brings more opportunities to you. It's casting a wide net, if you will, so increasing your surface area for luck. So giving people more opportunity to see what you can do, see that you exist and you stand out. If you're doing things like this or you're doing video, giving people a chance to see who you are, that you're a person, and see, hey, one's fun. He likes bow ties. He's a character. I'm going to have fun working with this guy, rather than a fairly mundane piece of paper that you don't know anything about. This John, who's on this bit of paper you've got, could be a nice guy, could not, could be brilliant at what he does. You don't know anything. Where if you've built that personal brand, you start to show some of your expertise, show some of your values, show some of your personality. People are going to know a bit more about you. People are going to know that you exist. And again, you look at a lot of recruiters nowadays will talk that when they're looking for people, they look on LinkedIn first. So they're going to go and look to find you. If you're active and you're posting that stuff, who are they going to find? The person that hasn't updated their LinkedIn profile for 5 years, the person that doesn't have a GitHub, that isn't active anywhere on social media, that's maybe put their CV on a recruitment portal somewhere and hoping that something's going to happen. Or the person when they go on LinkedIn and go, oh, I want to search for, let's say, people that know C Sharp. LinkedIn gives them the searches, and LinkedIn, I haven't used the recruiter tools, but I've been told by several recruiters, it brings to the front people who are open to work, and people who are active. And that makes sense. LinkedIn wants these tools to be valuable. So are they going to show a recruiter somebody that hasn't updated their CV and hasn't logged in for years? Or are they going to show you somebody that logged in yesterday, that's got open to work, that's got a whole bunch of stuff about C Sharp? And then when the recruiter clicks through and goes, oh, is this the right person? Their profile's interesting, they're active, they've got a good picture, talking about that kind of topic, then that recruiter is going to think, oh, this is the guy I should, or girl, that I should reach out to and say, hey, are you interested in this opportunity? So it's all about just increasing your surface area for luck, being available. And again, hiring managers do this several times. And when I've been recruiting, I have gone on LinkedIn, I've done a search for people in the part of the country that I'm recruiting for, looked for the skill set, and I have then reached out to people. And the people I've reached out to are the people that have got a photo, you can see they're a human, that have got something on their profile that tells me who they are and what they do, and maybe have looked active. You know, if they haven't updated things for months and never log in, I'm not going to reach out to them and see if they're interested in the role, because they might never get my message. It's a waste of my time.
It's funny you said, check, what is it? They might be human. Because I feel like that's very relevant these days. A lot of people aren't necessarily people, it seems like. You got a lot of potentially fake profiles out there.
Yeah, I wasn't
So,
actually thinking of that aspect. I was more thinking from the point of view that last time I did it, I was looking for customer facing people. So I was very much looking for, do these look like people that are going to be outgoing and want to get involved in a customer facing role?
okay. Oh, but but that reminds me. You're posting in public as an engineer, and an engineer isn't necessarily considered to be a public facing role in the same way that say sales is.
Yeah, but some of us do end up working in, say, solution architecture or developer experience or developer advocate roles these days. So last time I was recruiting and actively using LinkedIn that way, I was looking for people who were going to be solution engineers that were going to go and work on site with customers. And we're going to have to be, again, back to that communication. Communication was so important. Were they going to be the kind of people that seem like they could engage and talk to customers, that would be happy in that environment?
Hmm. All right, good. That makes sense. It sounds like just having that presence, it gives you more opportunity and a way to brand yourself apart from what your employer is. For those of us who aren't already working for a place like Google or Netflix, it's probably very useful to showcase your skills and your abilities and what you're able to do.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, if your CV is full of you worked for, the key people in your industry, whether that's Google or Meta or whether that's investment bank or hedge fund, if you're in finance, 99% of us don't work for those organizations. So if we want to stand out from the other 99% of us, we need to have something that's a bit different. So creating that personal brand, creating that profile, and putting yourself out there gives you a chance to stand out.
yes. Speaking of standing out, let's see if we can't get this bow tie here. So I'll do this again. So what I'm doing is I'm this will be the front part of the tie. I'm going to
I'm good
flip
with that.
under here and then put that on my shoulder temporarily. All right, and that's the squirrel on my shoulder. And then I look at the widest part of the tie. I fold it over. All right, that's going to be the front part of the tie. I'm going to pull this over. This is going to be the cross of the tie, and this looks somewhat like an elephant. I pull the elephant's ears. I pull on its trunk. I look for the hole in the back. There should be a hole. I can stick my finger through that hole. And what I like to do is see I have the base of the trunk in my forefingers. So I just pinch it like this.
Um,
Oh, are you ahead of me?
it's going that way, but it's not quite gone right.
Okay, so it looks like you got an elephant. You pull
So I got the ears. Yep.
yeah, you pull the ears. You look for the hole. You poke your fingers through that hole. So there's a hole. It's not touching your neck. It's not touching
So
your Yes, perfect. And then you pinch the between your thumb and forefinger. You grab the end of that fabric that you have. Then you try to punch the end of that fabric through that hole, because what you want to do is you want to make a loop that becomes the back loop of the tie. So when you pull it, you just want to make sure that loop is straight up, and then you should be able to unfold it and tighten it and have a bow tie. It would look better if I just need to straighten it up. There we go. That looks bow tie-ish. It's that third step that makes it hard. Uh-oh, we're close. How's that look? You just need to tighten it up. So in the back loop right here, you make sure you pull the make sure this loose part is in your hand so you're not pulling it out, and then you just tighten the end so it makes the middle part fit up tighter. Uh
I think I'm just going to pull that. Yeah.
let's see. All right, so okay, you got your elephant. Pull the ears. All right, pull down the trunk and look for the hole and pull the base of the trunk through that hole. Oh, okay, okay, and just tighten it by with the back loop. So, like, see, I have my front loop. I'm moving out. Like, the back loop is a double, right? And then the other side of the back loop, it's a
I think
single.
I appear to have two loops on one side.
That shouldn't be. Unless you flipped it. Because let me think, how would you have two loops on one side? See, when you fold your you know what? That's
No,
funny. I never thought about that. When you fold the your front loop, right? You'll have a double on that side, but then you're actually pushing the end through that one side where you already have the double loop. So the double loop ends up on the other side. Ooh, this is a
how
fun
about
question. Oh, we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay. With so many technologies out there, how do you personally decide what to learn next? And how would you advise someone just starting out?
I don't think I'm winning any prizes for that.
You know, look,
No,
I've literally tied ties probably 1,000 times. I mean, I don't know. I've been doing this since 2016, right? Because when I moved to Charlotte, which is my hometown, you can see from the
mhm.
skyline back there. Um, I had to work for the bank. Everyone works for the bank at least once. And so instead of wearing a necktie, I decided I was going to wear a bow tie. So it took me maybe 3 hours of watching YouTube to figure out how to tie a tie. But I did figure it out. And I don't know. I started with one tie. Now I have, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 100 of them. I'm not going to count them. But I don't know. I tie and untie and tie and untie. It's a party trick, so obviously don't invite me to a party because that's what kind of person I am. But no, that's awesome actually. So that's great. Yes. But with so many technologies out there, how do you personally decide what to learn next? And how would you advise someone just starting out?
So let's start with just starting out first. I think when you're starting out, you should stick to one programming language and one area and avoid the temptation to chase lots of shiny things. You've got a whole career ahead of you. There's plenty of time to learn lots of different things. Try and learn one thing in depth. Try and get particularly good at one skill set. So one programming language to start with, and again, one related set of technology. So maybe if you're a front-end developer, pick Vue or React. If you're focusing on the back-end side, maybe pick that you're going to particularly focus on SQL or NoSQL databases, or so on. Pick something that is in the area you want to learn, and just one set of technologies that you can learn and develop a good set of understanding with. Being pragmatic in the current market, I would say how you choose that is probably down to either what you're absolutely passionate about because you feel really strongly, or look in your local job market. Go and look at what the adverts are. What are people recruiting for? Where you live, or where you're prepared to work, or where you're prepared to move to, and be quite mercenary and focus on that. So, if you live somewhere and 90% of the jobs are Python, go and learn Python. If you're near the bank, say, where a whole bunch of the jobs are going to be C++ or Java or C Sharp, pick one of those and learn that, because getting that professional experience and getting your foot in the door is so powerful, isn't it? We both, took that tech support role, tried to take that tech support role in my case, to get our foot in the door and get that first experience. So make it easy. Don't put roadblocks up for you. So if you're in a finance area where everyone's doing C Sharp, Java, or C++, don't go and learn Rust. Don't go and learn Python. Go and learn what the local demand is and get that experience. Get your foot in the door. It'll make everything else after that easier.
Yeah, I think one thing that happened with both of us, since we both learned relatively young, we didn't necessarily have to learn, you know, um, a lot of different systems. Like when I learned, I was working with BASIC, and all I had to do was learn BASIC, and BASIC taught me loops and variables and data types and all of the basics parts of programming and whatnot. And then when I went to a functional programming language, then it was functions and all of those things. So I get it. That definitely makes sense. And today a modern web app includes not just your front end and your back end, but it's many multiple layers. So I get it. Just focusing on, say, something like a SQL database probably can give you a good foothold as far as figuring things out and not having to worry about all the various layers. Because when I first became a web developer, I started on Cold Fusion, but the Cold Fusion book had a chapter on SQL, it had a chapter on HTML, it had a chapter on CSS, it had a chapter on JavaScript. So if I hadn't already been a programmer at that point, it might have very well been overwhelming.
I had a similar experience to you as well. I started with basic because again, back when I started, if you wanted to do anything with the basic, which typically came with most computers, then you had to go and buy a compiler. So I really desperately wanted from about the age of 15 to learn C. But the only way to get a C compiler is for me to save up £50 at the time, which was a lot of money.
Oh yeah, back in my day, 50 quid. Ooh. You could buy, well, I don't know. That's a lot of money for a kid back in that time. I understand.
Yeah, I
Children
mean,
today don't understand. $50 is what, like a pack of gum now? I don't know.
well, yeah, I mean, £50 at the time, I was making £2 an hour working in a food
Hmm.
and veg shop. So £50 was a lot of money. And if I'm really honest, probably off the shop, I saved my money up and bought guitars instead. So, buying a C compiler wasn't high on my list. But when I got the chance to A, do work experience and B, go to university, that was the first time I had access to a C compiler. And also the first time I then had access through the university to a Pascal compiler, to Prolog, and these other programming languages. So that's when I really started to learn more programming languages because it was now accessible and affordable. And even the first couple of years of my career, I learned Delphi, which is Pascal with some stuff, C++. Visual Studio back in those days was expensive. So learning C++ and getting on a C++ compiler was expensive. Delphi cost me a couple of £100 for my first job.
Oh, wow.
And nowadays, you can just download the compilers for most things free off the internet. There's an open source compiler for a lot of languages. It's a very different world, which in a way makes it harder because there's all those temptations there to go and learn every single one. So try to resist that. Pick something you're absolutely passionate about, or pick whatever is going to get your foot in the door in the local market. And I say local because a lot of companies are unfortunately going back to having people in the office, at least hybrid. So again, you're trying to get that work experience in today's climate. Put as few obstacles in your way as possible. Just make it easier to get that first couple of years experience, because everything will change after that. Not least, in 2 years' time, you'll have a couple of years experience, but in 2 years' time, hopefully, the market will improve. We'll be out of the current economic status, hopefully, and you'll be in a far better position then.
Yeah.
As to what I decide to learn, I have been entirely driven by my curiosity for 95% of it, I think. Maybe 90% of it, depending on which bits you include, because I've learned a lot of things because I was curious. I wanted to learn them. Then there are other things that I have learned because I started my own business. I had to eat, so I went and learned sales and marketing because I had a very strong imperative to do that. Some of those other things, then some of the leadership skills, again, I was learning my own business. I needed to learn how to lead people and learn a business, so that was a strong imperative. Then as I came back, started to work for other people and be involved in learning bigger teams and bigger businesses, I wanted to get good at things. I spent all this time getting good at software engineering, and I wanted to be equally good at managing people and leading people. So again, put the effort into learning that. So I was curious, sometimes driven by, oh, I sucked at that. How could I do that better?
Right.
So, I've improved at interviewing by thinking, actually, I'm terrible at interviewing. I hired this person and it didn't work out. I hired somebody and I had to fire them. That's really on me. Why did I hire the wrong person? Why did I hire a person that wasn't a good fit? Because now, it's been a negative experience for them. It's a negative experience for the team, negative experience for me. How can I get better at hiring the right people? So I learned how to hire better. Still learning that again. I think that's a lifelong journey.
Yeah, I get it. It's you're continuous learning. It seems like you're always learning something. So, what's a small idea or lesson that had an outsized impact on your career? Something that changed how you thought or worked?
The importance of soft skills. So the irony of this is a CEO that I worked for who I didn't respect, didn't really like, and the advice he gave me was totally wrong. Had a very stern conversation with me about soft skills and emotional intelligence and how important that was. And like a lot of software engineers, I didn't particularly feel that was true at the time. But I was also curious, like, this guy's telling me a lot of things. I don't know a lot about this. I don't think he's right, but I'm going to go and learn about it. So I went away and spent a couple of years and reading several books about emotional intelligence, digging into it. And everything he'd said was wrong, but it opened my eyes to the importance of emotional intelligence, soft skills. So that was incredibly useful because I listened to the criticism, partly set out, being a little bit arrogant at the time to prove him wrong. But it doesn't really matter that it was wrong because, again, the important thing that you've got to take away from that is that factually everything he said was wrong, and trying to tell me that this body language says that and various other things doesn't matter that technically is wrong, because what matters with your emotional intelligence, soft skills, and how you deal with people is how they perceive you.
Mm.
So it was right for his reality. He was right for his reality. And if I wanted to work effectively with him, I had to understand and empathize with his reality and be able to communicate in his language, in his way, and understand it. And I think that far more of us software engineers would do better in life if we recognize that. It's very easy to say, oh, they're being a snowflake, or if they're that emotional intelligence, they should come to me and meet me where I'm at. It doesn't work that way. We're all flawed human beings. We all fail to do that. So if you want to change somebody else, you want to get the best out of them, you have to go to them. You have to make the change to make it work. I think that's incredibly powerful, and I think it would be great if more people learn that.
Yeah. Well, as a leader, what's one underrated skill or habit that you wish more engineers developed earlier?
I think it's following on from that. It's how to sell. Now, many people bristle when I say that because they jump immediately to, I don't want to sell cars. I don't want to sell, I'm a software engineer. But there is far more to selling than getting somebody to buy a used car for cash. You want somebody to pay down technical debt. You want somebody to commit to a technology. You want to hire somebody, or you want to get some training. You want to go to a conference. All of those things involve you selling. You want to get hired. It's all sales. It's all presenting to see that there is this issue, there is this thing that we could do, and this is how it'll help address that issue. So it's all sales. So, you have a problem that you cannot deliver the software that you've got because you don't have enough people, you don't have the skills. Hire me, and I'll solve that problem for you. That's sales. We need to pay down this technical debt because it's making my life miserable having to keep dealing with this, or we're wasting this time as a team every time we have to deal with these issues. We should pay down the technical debt. Again, that's sales. Is I have a pain, which most people don't care about fixing. So you've got to turn it into their pain. So, the selling is you have a pain. We can't deliver features quickly enough, and it's because of this technical debt. This is why we should fix it. This is what it's going to cost, and this is how it makes your life better. Again, so we want people to pay down technical debt. That's how we put it into their terms and get them to buy into it. Every single one of those things, it's all sales. So learn how to sell. Again, some people would call that influence, but ultimately it's all about selling your ideas, selling your values, selling your mission, selling your beliefs.
I get it. That makes sense. Persuasion, influence, sales. The fact is sometimes you're able to see something that perhaps other people are not able to see, and you want to use be able to leverage your perspective and leverage the talents of others. So being able to get more people on your side so that you can, attack something as a team or solve something as a team. It's definitely very important because if you're the only person that sees it, you're the only person that's going to work on it. And that doesn't scale,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
the thing about this is selling is actually mostly asking questions.
Hmm.
It comes back to that curiosity. It's like, what pain do you have on? Why is it a pain for you? What if we did this about it? How would that help you? How would that make your life better? Cool. So if we address that problem, your life will be better. Now you've done a very very cut down pitch of why we should address that technical debt or why we should do something about that pain point.
Okay, that
And then
makes sense.
asking questions.
And let me ask this. If someone wants to grow into a leadership role but doesn't know where to begin, what's the first step you'd recommend?
Be a leader. So that's easy to say, but um, leadership is not a title. Leadership is something you do. So if you want to be a leader, start leading. You don't need anybody's permission to be a leader. You don't need somebody to tell you to be a leader. If you want to be a leader, just start. And again, this applies to so many things in life, but just start. So find something that you have a strong belief on, or you have a vision on, and just start leading. You only become a leader when somebody follows you. And Derek Sivers has a great TED talk on this, on how to start a movement, which I think it's about 3 minutes long. You'll find it on TED's website. And it's a perfect demonstration of leadership. It's this young lad at some event who just gets up and starts dancing rather stupidly. Yeah, it's one person alone dancing stupidly initially. So that's what it is as a leader. You take a risk, you go out there and put yourself out and start doing something. A minute or two into this dancing stupidly on the side of this hill, other people get up and start dancing, the second and third person. Now you've got some followers. Now you're a leader. They've made you a leader by being willing to follow. And eventually, a whole chunk of people on this hill are dancing. Yeah, that's leadership. You didn't need permission, you didn't need a title, you didn't need authority to do it. You just get up, start doing it. If people buy into what you're doing and see that there's value in it and they start following you, you're a leader.
Okay. Yeah,
Just do it, right? Just do it.
that's a different way of thinking about it. I've never thought about that before. But yeah, sometimes um you just need one person to start, because sometimes people want to do something, but they're waiting on someone else to give them permission. So maybe that's a way to do that, be curious, don't wait for permission, be a leader. All of these things, sound like they combine to, help you become a great engineer and a great leader, right?
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
exactly how I got my first few leadership roles. And that I
Okay.
said a couple of times, somebody should do this. And everyone looked at their feet. And then the next day I went, okay, like, I'm going to do it then. And after I'd done it for a little while, it's like to me, oh, you're in charge of this. It's like, well, am I? Okay, fine.
I
Nobody
get it.
gave me permission. I started doing it. I started being a leader. People started following, and the title came later.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. I think it's good to consider that you can start where you are, right? No matter where you are, you can start right now, instead of saying one day I'll be a leader, day one today. I'll start
Yeah,
by leading. I'll spearhead this project. Instead of somebody, you can be that somebody.
yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. All right. Well, looks like we're almost out of time. I do want to say, there are if you have any questions, any comments, you can put that into the comments, and I'll see those, and we'll see if we have any time to address those. That's great because this is live. And let's see. Let me think. John, again, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Do you have any closing thoughts, perhaps, that you want to um leave us with?
Well, firstly, thanks for the invite, one. It's been a pleasure. Um, Pleasure meeting you a couple of weeks ago when we first talked, and it's been a pleasure doing this. Closing thoughts for all of this would be, again, just get out there and start, whether you're building a personal brand, wanting to become a software engineer, wanting to become a leader, just start doing it. Very few of these things do you need anybody's permission for. Software engineer, you can download your favorite programming language, just start building something. Being a leader, just start, go out there, do it. Start a bit of open source if you want. Start a community. You can just make that start, be a leader. As soon as somebody's following you, you're a leader. And you will learn much, much more by just doing it and starting.
Yeah,
Start.
yeah, I think that's great advice. Good to start. We didn't need permission to start when we were kids, right? So, why do you
Exactly.
need permission to start today? You know, so that's great. I'm gonna go ahead and end this, and remember to tune in next time, same time every Thursday at noon Eastern time. So, and thank you again. So, I guess I'm signing off for this week. All right, goodbye.